Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another dissection here on Anatomy of a Movie. We've got a lot to discuss today. We're talking about race, of course, and as the name implies, it's a double meaning. There's race, meaning to race in a race.
Like running.
But we're stuck in the blocks today, aren't we?
In games.
Yes, we are. And, of course, racism. Yeah. We've got John Comerford. Welcome, John Comerford, one of Hollywood's top acting coaches and script doctors. Sarah,
what they say.
Sarah Stretton, actress, writer, and of course, co-host of Box Office Breakdown.
That's also what they say.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we do some box office breakdown, Camino and Rich, just all different popcorn talk shows.
There you go. And of course, we have Marisa Serafini.
Hello,
Welcome, Marisa
everyone.
Serafini, graphic design expert, and of course, senior producer here at AfterBuzz TV and Popcorn Talk. And I'm your host, Phil Svitek. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
No details? No details?
What's your CV?
I run all of this.
There you go.
And
He's the boss man.
And I'm an editor for feature films.
Yes.
So let's start with, of course, we're talking about race. It's a sports drama. It's a biopic. It's many different things. It's the second movie about Jesse Owens.
Only.
Only.
Which is kind of a surprise to me.
Well, you know, in a way that's good. At the same time, I hate when they overdo certain things.
I do too, but I mean,
I'm not sure if it's the same project, but I think there was also a mini series about him as well. So
From 1984?
You're throwing years at me. We've already been over this debate.
thought there'd be no math
and
in
years. I'm a little dyslexic.
There's
I
no
switch
math
them all
involved.
around.
It's just a year.
I just say there were numbers involved. So.
Oh, no.
And, you know, one of the things we'll get into is that this movie was very heavily supported by the Owens family itself.
Right, yes.
So it has its stamp of approval. And the biggest thing for me, this was made on a budget of $5 million. That is
Shocking.
very shocking. We'll kind of go over, obviously, why I'm shocked by that. But I think it lives beyond its $5 million budget in grander ways. But, you know, let's start with you, Marisa. Overall thoughts for the movie?
I really enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of the Olympics and anyone who has the talent and drive and, you know, effort that they put into something that's, like, so near and dear to them when it comes to sports. So, like, I acknowledge talent, and then I acknowledge the stories that goes behind the talent. And what I really enjoyed to Jesse Owens, I knew about him as a person and his history and what he means to just, you know, sports in general. And it's nice to actually see a well thought out movie about his life and how he got there and what he actually had to overcome during his moments of success. And I think it's great to, you know, keep bringing it to the light that everyone needs to know about this.
I agree. I thought that a big goal in them creating this movie was making something that was inspiring, that was family friendly, and I thought that overall that was really well met. I liked enjoying seeing this hero's journey. Stand-up guy. I liked reliving this story and finding more about the why and the how versus just the what. The what being like his success, his gold medals, all of that. And I was thoroughly engaged. I didn't think that this was my favorite sports film or my favorite hero's journey, but I enjoyed watching it, and I think it's I would recommend this because I would want more people to know this story, to know about this man, versus to know about this film, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that.
And of course, John.
I would agree with that. I thought, you know, first of all, I'm a history buff. I don't know, for those who have listened before, I love talking about history movies. I think they're very challenging movies to write because there's so many constraints. I'm right in the middle of writing one right now, so I understand those constraints. But I enjoyed the film. I thought, for me, it was a little safe in its depiction of things, and I wanted more conflict and drama in it, but I thought it was a fairly accurate portrayal, and I enjoyed that part of it. And I, for instance, just the part that he broke 3 records and tied a 4th in an hour is something that most people don't know, which is an incredible human feat, and I thought it was great. That's the first time I've ever seen it on film. I don't even know what the other movies did. But anyway, so there are lots of things I like about it. There were lots of things I was hoping for more of in this one, but I still enjoyed the movie.
What was I want to kind of ask you this as we get into the development of this, because I did enjoy it, but what did you guys want more of? Because in terms of at least critics themselves, they have various points of what they wanted more of, and that's part of what didn't necessarily hit the movie for them. And so I want to kind of get from you, what is it that you wanted more of?
Well, I can tell you, if you name the movie Race, then I thought it was going to be more of a... I mean, 'cause obviously race is part of it. They have arguments, they have scenes that deal with black, white, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it didn't really sink deep enough into that. It wasn't toothy enough. It didn't really get down in there. And I wanted it to, and I thought they could have, but they chose not to. For instance, I didn't need as much of the Leni Riefenstahl storyline. I was like, I don't know why we're here so much and so long. To me, that wasn't a race story, But I could have done less with that and more of his struggle, his internal struggle, his what all those forces that he was dealing with. Because I appreciated the way they told that storyline. I just wanted more of it, and I thought the actor handled it well. And I was like, well, he can do it. Let's give him more to do.
Yeah.
I agree. I felt like I was taking only so many steps forward or so many steps in. The one that comes to mind in the words is like, I was looking for deeper, more of a payoff. One of the scenes that really comes to mind is when the coach is looking for the shoe factory, sees people being carted away secretly in the night, and then it never comes up again.
It just
and like there's little through lines where it's like it's hidden there, and then he's talking with I believe his name is Lutz. He's talking with the other athlete, the German athlete, and they're talking about things being hidden and the girl being pregnant, but then it's just never really continued. It's kind of these hints everywhere that since we know what happened, we see how it was hidden, but we never had the conversations, had the anything really coming full circle
and we didn't
in
see
that
how it
arena.
affected our main characters.
Yeah.
We just didn't see that. We saw it was there, and we all know the history of it, so it was like they felt like they didn't want to explore that. But then it doesn't matter. What matters is how it affects your main characters if you're going to tell that storyline.
Yeah, and I think that they did try and confront that it was complicated and that there were so many layers for him of pressure. The self-pressure, athletic pressure, cultural pressure, country pressure. I just thought it was kind of like point to these different things instead of dive into the different things. I just could have had a lot more time there than with some of the minor characters that I thought kind of came and left.
Marisa, what
I mean, I understand what you were saying, Sarah. You said they hinted at a lot of things. I agree with that because it felt like we saw that these were issues that they were aware of and acknowledged, but they never fully resolved them or did any action to fix the problem. And that's where I wanted more, just resolving them, actually taking action and doing something about it to overcome the racism issue in either country that they're in. Another thing was that there was some moments where it wasn't as intense as it should have been. I never really felt that Jesse Owens was in complete danger. I felt he was safe the whole time. He's going into a situation where people are going to be having all these strong thoughts about him, but I never was really thought his life was in jeopardy at any moment.
I agree with that, and I think that part of it was, I don't know if it stood up for you guys, but there was no close-ups.
There was no
on
tension.
any points of tension. When you were dealing with mobs or secrets or Hitler or anything. It was all in like pretty much wide shots, mediums. Like you weren't seeing the suffering, you weren't seeing the tension.
And I think speaking
with
to
anyone
that
else.
point,
Yeah.
it wasn't. His life wasn't in jeopardy. But even if his life isn't in jeopardy, you want that internal, you want that tension, you want that drama and conflict and everything like that. And in the absence of that, it lays a little bit flat.
Yeah, I mean, and sorry to just maybe not to jump ahead, but like there was a missed opportunity when Jesse was supposed to meet with Adolf Hitler, and I think that could have been a great moment. It's like, oh, this is something that could have really gone down in history, but it didn't.
Yeah. So.
And that could have been where the tension was.
Well, part of, I think there's a couple of factors that could play into that, right? As we mentioned, the daughters were heavily involved in this process for over 5 years, and they don't...
The daughters of Jesse Owens, by the way, in case nobody followed that.
And they don't say specifically which moment they wanted to write in the movie as historically inaccurate. And perhaps it could have been that, we don't know, but they really fought to make sure that it didn't happen. So when you're trying to also appease them and get that stamp of approval, sometimes it might not happen. And then the thing that I want to get into, and it's tough because of the panel that we're formed with. We're not the most diverse panel in the world right now, but there is a criticism. The way Sarah found this fact of where the initial spark was for the movie. So I don't know if you want to, from the director himself, where it came from, and then I'll get into where I'm going with it.
This is a quote from Hopkins, who said, "I asked myself the question, how was it possible for a 22-year-old African-American man to walk into this gladiatorial and hostile arena with 200,000 saluting Nazis and be able to hold it together and push everything away and explode for 10 seconds on the track?" So that was really what he was going for. It is the getting into how. It is the understanding the pressure, understanding the global significance, the departure from home, the uncomfortability. That's my own words. And quote a little while ago. But so he really wanted to tackle the life. It did change. Originally in production, he thought about using all of Jesse Owens' life instead of bringing it down to about a couple-year period.
Right.
And that's the other part. I mean, when you're making a film, it's supposed to be the sum of everything, but chosen in very select moments. And I'm glad they didn't go that route. The problem. So one of the main criticisms is that Joe Shrapnel and Anna Waterhouse, who wrote this, they're white. They are, and so, and just like in the movie when Snyder's character says, "I have no idea what you're going through." Part of the main criticism is that, because they don't know what it could be like for Jesse Owens, they, as much as they want to relate and empathize, they just can't get in that headspace. And a lot of critics are citing that as the core shortcoming of all of this. And so instead they were trying to give, as he said, get that moment when he does walk in by inserting all of these external things, that's supposed to give it that weight rather than that internal thing that perhaps they didn't know.
I mean, it's hard. I think that that's a little bit to point the finger. I think that there are so many factors that go into this. There's a $5 million budget. There's a family that also... I'm not saying that the argument isn't wrong, because we don't know. We haven't seen another script, and we haven't seen another movie made for the same story, made by African American writers or whatnot. But I think that I can say that no one is ever going to be exactly able to get inside Jesse Owens' head, because he's Jesse Owens. It's one person, and he didn't write it. So where to put the blame for the shortcomings? I don't think this was an awful movie, and I don't know how much studio involvement had. Who decided where the line was of how deep to go into this? If it was the writers, if it was the family, it was the studio. I don't know that.
And I just kind of want to push back on that notion that you have to have a black writer or a white writer, because if the logic is you have to have a black writer to write a black story, and you can't have a white writer do that, then it would also hold true that a black writer couldn't write a story for a white person, and I disagree with it. I think a writer can. That's what writers do.
That's what writers are supposed to do.
Supposed to do, exactly.
A good writer is supposed to be able to get ahead of another person. I also think that then where do you stop that argument? It's the same thing as method acting. Like, where do you stop that argument and say, well, a woman can't write for a male role, or male can't write for a woman's role? If you're a good writer, learning the head of your characters and learning the voice of whatever gender or ethnicity you're playing, that's your job, and you should be good at that. It's everyone's human unless you're writing for Marvel.
And some of these things that everyone goes through, these are human emotions. So even though they come out of racism, there's a human side of it. We all should be able to really relate to that and be able to come from that. I just think that it's simplistic to say that this is the reason why. Mm-hmm. That it's because they were white that they weren't able to reflect that or relate that or write that.
Yeah,
but that's also not to negate that. I think also most likely it is a rule that you write what you know.
Yeah,
and that does help.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not the contributing factor. I just dislike the idea that a Mexican couldn't write a story for
Asian.
An Asian. Thank you.
Well, let me ask you. Part of it was, obviously Jesse is not alive today. He died at this point fairly long time ago.
1980, I think.
And he wasn't a very vocal person to begin with, so it's not like he's doing press conferences and saying after the fact of like, oh, geez, I feel so great about this win. I really hope this advances, African Americans in the United States, so on and so forth. Like he's just a very quiet guy, and he was that as the movie depicts it. Like. As his wife says, you are a runner. Just do that. Mm-hmm. That's what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it becomes, you can see how that could be difficult when you're, okay, the guy just ran.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What do I know about him?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the portrayal of Jesse, maybe for just the movie that we as the audience saw, is that it wasn't really him focusing on the racism issue. It was more, because that wasn't the thing that really drove him. I saw it was more his family was his support. His coach was his support. I always saw that support system to go against the racism rather his own internal struggles against it.
I mean, I agree. I think that the struggles against... My main thing comes back to the family's happy. It was interesting that the family had support. They got the movie they wanted. They tried to remain as close to history as possible. We're having some backlash over the writers or not going too deep. I know that on top of that, in research we found that they had problems with getting acceptance from the Olympic Committee, even today, with a lot of struggles. Supposedly there might have been some kind of blackmail and such going on. So it seems like there was battles even in the making of this.
Well, and we got to bring the budget in. If it's only a $5 million, you don't have a lot of budget for development. You just don't. Because if you want these stories to be deeper and better, it takes a while to get that script right. And if you've only got $5 million to play, and most of that's going to be on the screen, you're just not gonna spend the time you need to develop that project.
Yeah, well, I mean, the most surprising, it seemed like apart from Jason, everyone else is kind of. I can't say. I mean, you have Jeremy Irons, so I don't want to demean anyone.
They had some pretty good, known people. Jeremy Irons, they even had.
Yeah. I mean, I guarantee they must have all been taking a pay cut. So, I feel like this was a passion project for a lot of them, because at the end of the day, that's what drives these. But you can make a movie fairly cheap, but then what drives it up is the star power. Yeah, and then producers and the names to kind of be involved with it.
Right.
So I like that passion, and I thought overall they did a good job of that. But yeah, I mean, I think they stretched it, and they were strategic. Part of the criticism is they, you could see. Maybe if they were longer at the actual games and spent the most, a bulk of the story there.
But to me, that's third act. I don't think you need to do any more than that. Did you think you needed to be there at the halfway point? Because the midpoint to me was fine.
Again, the problem is his life, and it's a good problem. His life is so interesting that any one of those, you can isolate this to such a small portion that, you can make his life leading up to the Olympics just as interesting if you really wanted to.
There are tons of movies about college successful athletes
exactly.
that are full movies.
Right.
Yeah.
But in terms of the structure, I mean, if the director's saying what was fascinating to me was how this kid, 22-year-old kid, could go into a stadium, 200,000 people, all seeking Heil. I think the time frame he picked was great. Yeah, because that's all we needed. I didn't have any problem with that. I think the fact that the third act was all at the Olympics, there you go. That's fine. I don't think you need anything more than that.
You know what was interesting, if you kind of really think about it in that way, just what I really loved about the whole story was the added element of them saying, "Wow, the Germans can't be so bad. We're not segregated."
Yeah.
You know, but because at that point, you know, we'd only seen
They
their
cleaned
struggle.
up their act.
Yeah, but it was their Jewish friends that were like, whoa, don't get so cozy in here. You know, and it was a kind of that reality check of it all. How did you guys think that worked? And
I thought it was great because they're still doing it. I mean, in China, when they were getting ready for their Olympics, they did all kinds of works on the roads from the airports to the hotels, and everything beyond that was not cleaned up and taken care of. So they still do it to this day. I'm sure Brazil's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They were trying to present a good face.
They were. There was a debate in Brazil, I believe, because they weren't having enough money for their schools, but they were putting all this money into stadiums. What can be hidden and why things are hidden.
And the whole thing was a propaganda exhibit to begin with.
Well, you know, the interest one of the storylines that people do have a problem with is the filmmaker side of it, which I've actually found interesting because only because, like, from a German perspective, it's such a weird fascination. They always filmed everything, and in this particular instance, it was supposed to be propaganda, and you know, the common misconception, at least from what I understand, is everyone thinks that they used to film the camps as a part of a propaganda piece. No, they filmed it because, you know, Hitler didn't believe that they would carry it out, so he wanted a record of everything.
Exactly.
You know, and so I did like that aspect because, again, it's just a weird German mindset.
Yeah.
I liked how the filmmaking for the whole documentary during the whole Olympics, like, I liked how that ended on a positive note. Because it was for, again...
If not for them, we would never...
It was for propaganda, but at the end, you can even see the main woman, like, her perspective even changed. Like, you're making my film, and this is for everybody to witness that you actually did this during this time. So it had a more positive message to it at the end of it.
That's such an interesting point. I hadn't heard that criticism. And my first thought is, like, I really did enjoy the filming aspect, not only because they had cast someone from Game of Thrones, but because I thought that her relationship was interesting. I was really intrigued by the film Olympia. It was like another story that I was kind of interested in. But I think that if they had taken that out and replaced the time spent on it with digging deeper into some issues, overall, I would have been more satisfied because coming out of that movie without that section about Olympia, I don't think I would have missed it. Versus in a movie about race, there are some things I did miss. So it's a really interesting argument because it didn't bother me and I enjoyed watching it, but I don't know if that was maybe the best choice.
But let me ask you this, because, again, the tough part is, you know, I'd like to see how people really think, but, you know, Marisa watches the Olympics, right? Like, you can't... It's tough, at least certainly for me, to say, because it's so accessible now, right? Whereas in that time, what are you really getting? Newspapers? Like, you're not... There's no TV.
Radio.
You know, so... And what are you going to go watch this in a movie theater after?
The radio count, maybe?
Yeah. And so that, to me, is, again, just giving it that context. And again, you could kind of take that away and you could just make it be part of it.
Yeah.
But I found it fascinating as just a nice kind of a hit in history to remind you things are very different.
But I don't think they made that argument. I think it was great that they included it. I didn't need anywhere near as much of it as I've said, and Sarah agreed on that. But they didn't put that in context, like, they've never done the Olympics like this before. They didn't really lay that out. We know that historically, but they didn't lay that out in the film.
And for me, I think that if it came to adding, if the point of it was also to add, like, I guess that there was other opinions in Germany and that people could change, I think that concept was already enough in the character of Lutz and that friendship that was very real and really affected Jesse Owens' character. Like, that had a direct effect on how he felt, what he learned, what he did.
That was why I think the movie succeeded to a
Yeah.
great degree. I thought that was great that they actually. Now, I don't even know if they historically they ever actually even met.
They were friends. There's
there's so many
the
pictures
pictures
of
of
them.
them at the end.
Right, I forgot about that. But I don't know. I don't know if the conversations they had in the movie were ones that they actually had. But it was effective for the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's again whether or not it's true. I mean, there's many accounts of them actually being friends. So you can, I give him a lot of credit. For a guy like that in Germany to go that way. I mean, again, part of it is like you really need to know. I feel like a lot of things going into this movie for the context of it all, and I think that perhaps is part of the problem. That it's just unfortunate. It just is what it is when you're dealing with that.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't big time.
Yeah. These things they're just hard to write well. They just are. The one I'm writing now is just kicking my ass. So I understand. What
So, okay, so talk about the process, and how it kind of just in general, like where do you begin when in that,
Well, there's the whole thing of the historical reference. You got to get that right. But see, when you're making a film, even if it's a biopic, it's not a documentary. You still got to write an entertaining movie. It's still got to have all the right beats. It's still got to have the right arcs and everything. And things that happen in real time don't happen in film time. So it really, most of your job is what not to include, because you can't possibly include everything that's important in 2 hours.
And making what you include relevant
Yeah.
and tie into something other than just a stated fact or an Easter egg, as they normally are in biopics. I think there's the rearrangement, there's kind of the condensing and spreading out of time. For this one, I think one of the weaknesses with this was that some of the references were thrown out, and I was like, oh, I know this is a true fact because it doesn't have a huge plot in the story. Like when they mentioned the cut on the chest, when they mentioned the shoes, that he hasn't found those shoes yet, except for that does kind of lead to the
didn't track at the end.
Yeah, it had a possibility to lead to something.
And that was great. It's like, wow, this is gonna be good. How's that gonna fit? And then it was what? And I'm going, don't even set it up if you're not gonna pay it off.
But it is finding that,
because they'd already made the point that they cleaned up their act. It wasn't really necessary that we need to see it again, because we knew that they cleaned up their act. They'd already made that point.
Unless one of them was going to confront it and bring it forward.
Yeah, and that never happened.
How did you guys feel about the technique? I mean, their conversations were so interesting to me, and it made me wonder, like, how much of this actually happens in the world where, let's say John spoke German, and then the translation would be, he feels happy.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I love that.
So that's not what he said it at all.
All the détente going on. Yeah,
telling you, they're Game of Thrones fans.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling
Now,
you.
I don't think Lenny Riefenstahl, I don't know if she acted as translator for Goebbels. I don't know. But it was effective for the movie, and it was kind of funny.
I liked it. It was a good plot device to show, just humor, along with all this so-called tension between these two different places. But it also just shows that how different everybody was. And they just kept hitting it on the head. Like, oh, you guys are making these, standards that we want you guys to live up to, and you're still not agreeing with us. So it still just showed the disconnect between America and Germany.
The hypocrisy.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so one of the other story elements that I think we need to talk, the ending of the movie, because so much has been written about it, in the sense they could have just as easily ended on a podium and picturesque type of moment, happiness, done. But they very specifically chose to come back and end it the way they did, where it's on a down note, but the kid asking for his autograph is a sign of hope.
Yeah.
For America, and especially in one of the things that Jason Sudeikis kind of took out of it, he's like, well, I didn't realize how relevant this movie is until after we made it.
Yeah.
So
that was a hard scene to watch.
It was, especially after just the accolades Jesse just won, but I liked how it showed the audience that it's not just Germany who was having issues with this; it was also America. So it's like look into the mirror. It's like everyone has to change.
Yeah, I actually appreciated it. I'm glad they did it.
Yeah, and that was for Ruth, the actress who plays Ruth. That was the hardest scene for her to get into character. She's like, I've never had to do. She has no frame of reference for having
she's never had to go through the back door.
Yeah, especially to her own kind of ceremony.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, absolutely. So let's talk Stephen James as Jesse Owens. I mean, so we've said it. A lot rode on his shoulders, and I think he delivered. We've said that, and so many other people agree. Initially, John Boyega was supposed to play Owens, but
thing came up for him.
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Stupid movie.
Yeah.
that shows.
Yeah.
He'll only have to do 20 of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he was a relatively unknown actor. He came into, he did LA Complex, then When the Game Stands Tall, and then most recently Selma, and that's when he really started getting praise, and he was actually getting ready for this while filming Selma.
I loved him in this. I really enjoyed his performance. I think what got me was for about, it felt like a third of the movie, he doesn't really have a character flaw. Like, he is a really
earnest,
hardworking,
good to his family,
talented, great to kind of everyone person.
Yeah.
And I recognized, and I was like, wow, are they going to give us a hero story with
no flaw?
With no flaw. And I was like thinking about it and watching it. I was like, I like him enough that's fine. I think I will watch this whole movie without a character flaw. Of course, 5 minutes later, he starts cheating on
dancing with the girl
on Ruth, and I was like,
okay, we're going with this one.
Okay, this is the flaw you picked.
Every man's got it.
Okay.
Wait, no.
But I did. I just from the get-go, from 3 minutes in, I wanted him to win. I knew he was going to win because I know the story, but I wanted him to win, and so I really, really, really liked him.
Yeah, I did too. I thought he did a great job of doing it, and I almost didn't care that he didn't have a flaw either. I was like, that's okay. He's so likable for me. I just wanted to hang with him, and I actually thought that the flaw that they picked kind of detracted from me. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, we picked that one. I was much more interested in carrying the weight of trying to live up to everybody's expectations and meet their goals rather than his own goals. I was much more fascinated by that storyline rather than his flaw of having an affair or whatever. And just when he said the line, I think he said it to Ruth. He said, "What if I don't win?" That I think that's the line he says, something like that. And I'm going, that's what you should. For me, that's where you want to be digging down. Is what you're an athlete. And what if everything they say about me is right? I'm just that to me, that was the dramatic stuff. And they kind of touched on it, but they didn't really mind that for all it was worth.
Yeah. I really enjoyed his acting. I think he just embodied what Jesse Owens was back then. And even just the physicality. And he was strong at the points where he was supposed to be strong. Sticking up to his coach and talking about racism. That's something you don't have to worry about, but I do. And then, so he got the message across at those moments, and then the points where he was soft and vulnerable, being with his wife and just wanting an engagement and having her married. It's he was soft and strong at the points he needed to be.
Yeah, I can't say one moment that he didn't do well. I mean, I thought everything they gave him to do, he did well. I don't think he had a bad moment in it.
Also, in just the production value of it, he says he did about 99% of his own running. He really wanted to do the role justice. He was wearing really uncomfortable, historically accurate shoes. He tried to do the long jump himself. So he really not only tried to embody Jesse Owens' character, but he did try to do the physical aspect
I think there was only
as
one
well.
shot where I noticed it wasn't him in the long jump. Maybe it was just the angle or whatever, but I was like, I don't think that's him.
There was 1% that he said he didn't do.
Well, the interesting part too is, he tried to do so much research for this, but when all you have is a black and white film to really go off of as the crux of all of this, especially for it's one thing to get into the mindset, right? You can read history books and kind of go into that. But when he wanted to make sure even the run itself, there was a very specific Jesse Owens run.
He did.
And they kind of touched upon it in the movie with Snyder saying, they say running quicker steps doesn't get you farther. I think that's wrong, blah, blah. So it was very, he did those things, which I really appreciated. And again, how do you even get there is the question. But I think obviously the daughters were there to help. One of the things that I did find interesting in terms of just the actual Jesse Owens was after this, in order to make money, what he'd sometimes do is compete against horses in actual races to try to win. Exactly. Which is it's amazing, that he can do that, but it's really sad that that's the resort he had to go to, because it's very much a circus type of act to have to make money. But
it shows his running capability.
It does. It really does. It's interesting. I mean, I haven't seen Selma, unfortunately, but how would you guys compare his? You haven't seen Selma either?
Yeah, I really liked his portrayal in Selma, because he was the person who was always there. He wasn't the one speaking a lot, but he was always there at every event, and you could see his character was constantly getting rocked by everything going on around him. And there were moments where he got to speak up and say his voice and his opinion, but I remembered, because, watching this film, I remembered him in Selma, because he was such a strong character in that film too.
That for me is, I kind of differ a little bit, just because for me Selma has such a strong cast. Mm-hmm. Like the performances in Selma I thought were really, really good. So I didn't come out of Selma really remembering him performance as a standout, but that's not to say it was bad or not like worth noting. It was just that there were so many strong performances that it was just good that he blended into them. And so in this, he really got to shine on his own. I thought he really carried the movie, but I'm not surprised because he did so well in Selma. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Jason Sudeikis. This is his first dramatic role. He's done SNL. He's done We're the Millers, Horrible Bosses 1 and 2. I thought he did a good job.
Yeah, the controversy. This is the one that's a controversial choice.
Why is that?
Well, because he's known as a comedian. Is that does he have enough gravitas to play a dramatic character? I mean, and I don't have any problem with putting comedians. If you're an actor, you can play comedy, you can play drama, whatever it is. But a lot of people can't. If they know the person is a comedic actor, they can't see them in a dramatic role, or they think it's weird. And it sometimes it can be a great thing, and sometimes it can be not so great.
I guess I'm kind of on the negative one of this. Not that I wanted to be, but there were points where Sudeikis' role as a coach, I just remember specifically like him insulting his jacket and being like, "Oh, that's a Sunday school jacket," and like it didn't play off as harsh enough to me. There was a couple of times where I thought he didn't really own the hard-ass coach bit.
Yeah.
I really believed the connection between the two of them.
Yeah, that I did too.
really believed the friendship. I thought he was a good coach.
Let me ask you this then,
but I just didn't think he was like a
because I agree with you on everything you're saying, and I was wondering, for me, this is what the difference was, is because usually you see the grizzled coach and he's much older. He's a mentor, he's a father figure. He's only 11 years older in the movie, and I think that's what it was in real life.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it for me, is that he didn't have the gravitas of that old grizzled mentor who's been through everything. For me, that's what it was. But I still agree that there were moments where and then. I don't know how to say it any other way. They gave him this thing. Oh, now he drinks. Okay, and
it's a very big cliche.
Yes, it was obligatory. It's like, oh my god. And I don't know if that was a character choice that he decided to come up with, that was in the script. But I just went. For me, that didn't play because it just seemed cliche.
Yeah, the connection bits.
Between the two of them?
The connection, yes, the connection between the two of them, the motivation for him to be on the ship as well, for him to be there, all of that played really well for me, and those are dramatic components. So I'm not saying that Sudeikis can't be a dramatic actor, because he did well in those areas, but for me, as a character, the introduction to him as a coach, into like kind of the role he played.
Even that was really cliche. The voiceover,
the secretary,
on the radio, and it's is he gonna get
another failure?
Lose his job, and it was almost cartoonish. It was caricature.
That part didn't get me as much.
So that's a tough thing to come into.
Yeah.
Well, you can't pin that on him.
No, I can't. But that doesn't help that character.
No. It doesn't help, but I mean,
not
I
a
don't
good
know. I'm just saying
establishment.
that's the part of his character that didn't work for me.
But for me, you can easily say that give this guy something more to do because I think he can handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't really mind just the overall fact that he's a comedian supposed to be playing a dramatic role. I didn't see it like that. I saw it as Jason Sudeikis is being this coach and embodying this person. I really enjoyed his strong performance when they were on the bleachers, him and Jesse during the Olympics. And he was like, you know what, I was supposed to be a part of this team and I missed my opportunity. And that's where I actually felt for him. And I think he hit those dramatic beats that everyone needed to with his character. And so again, I didn't mind having a comedic person do a dramatic role such as that. Because I think he did good.
One of Sudeikis' first thoughts when he read the story was that, just in the beginning, was that he thought the story was really relevant just simply because of what went on prior to the Russian Olympics with homosexuality. So his reaction was like, whoa, this story is still, relevant. And so that was his
Isn't
draw.
that ridiculous? I mean, yeah. I mean, it is. You just draw the parallel.
Yeah. It just keeps happening in different ways.
History keeps repeating, doesn't it? That's why you have Throwback Thursday every Thursday.
There you go.
All right. Anyone? Who else kind of stood out to you guys that you guys want to talk about? For me, it was Jeremy Irons. So,
Love
What
Jeremy
did you want to say
Irons.
about it?
well, yeah, I just liked the way Stephen Hopkins kind of looked at him. Is that he was more, the way he describes him, he was more villainous than the filmmaker because he knew what he was getting into, and he really knew that the secret dealings he was ultimately doing, despite whatever translations and things like that may have been going on. And it's Jeremy Irons, and I thought he played that so well because it's also, in terms of Avery, it's not a role that he wanted to necessarily partake in. He was like, "What? I'm an arguing. What am I doing?"
Yeah.
Like, no, you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he did. I mean, he accomplished what they wanted him to accomplish, which was have them tone it back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeremy Irons, he's such a great actor. Definitely see him in the Borgias. What I really liked just about his character and who this person was and what they brought to the screen of this particular movie was the politics behind what was actually going on with the Olympics. And even that is like another story I personally didn't really know. Like, okay, they had secret meetings and secret deals just to really get everybody on board with this. And I found that so fascinating. And I was actually kind of rooting for Jeremy Irons and his character, just maybe to the point where I was like, you're not doing the greatest things. But overall, if maybe the end justify the means, in a way. But I found that actually fascinating to watch because that was a key component of this overall story that I didn't know.
Well, I think it added a nice dramatic rhythm to the piece because without it, I mean, it would have been lacking. The fact that it's fine as long as we don't see it. I mean, I like God, and that thematically transcends to this country as well. I thought that part was needed to give some weight to it, and the fact that you have Jeremy Irons, who's obviously a talented man, that brings a whole gravitas to it as well.
Yeah, and just even the choices that I made, I'm sure it was kind of written to the script, but like, just not taking coffee or not taking this, and then eventually, I thought his mannerisms and just the way both interacted because his counterpart is so stoned. He was even looking at him most of the time. I thought those played out so.
I like those two together. I thought they did a great job in those scenes, and for me, I enjoyed them.
I thought I really liked that story as well. I'm on the same page. I thought it was interesting for the amount. There is in general I would say a larger amount of, I don't want to call them villainous characters, but non-heroic characters in this film, and it's interesting to see the ones which Jesse Owens interacts with and which ones he doesn't, because it ranges from you have your game maker, you have the businessman, you have the committee, all of which Jesse Owens doesn't have a huge connection with. There's like one scene and an extra line that you have, and those are like your really stable, like men who know what they're doing, have success, but are, I guess, bad or have some compromised morals. Versus, there's also an array of characters in this that are more of like your football team who's racist, your football coach, the
ultra
schooling,
racist.
the crowd, like, and those are your counterparts that Jesse Owens is directly dealing with. They don't have as like names or as much plot driven motivation as they do to create the atmosphere of pressure of what he went through. I kind of wish that there was a character that blended those two, that both showed the racism and also moved the plot instead of separating them.
Yeah, that's true. They did seem to compartmentalized.
Yeah, but I was engaged with the storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, what I did appreciate about his character was that it had more weight than at the end when he gets asked to do the race. Because, again, could it have worked? Maybe. Do I know the solution right now? No, but because he's the one who makes the decision. Hey, take the Jews out of the race. Mm-hmm. And then when Owen says like, hey, I'm not doing it unless they're okay with it, it had that weight. And so I appreciate it for when they were able to finally tie it all in together. I like that a lot. We've spoken about Lenny, but we do have a clip that I wanted to kind of play of the actual film itself. So why don't we cut to that? And the nice part is it's only 10 seconds. Which, of course, as the football coach goes, that's not fast. You realize meters are more than yards, right?
I loved that. That was amazing.
Indeed. So we have it queued up, and this is the 100-meter race. And by the way, the actress who portrayed it, obviously from Game of Thrones, as Sarah mentioned, she is fluent in Dutch, English, German, and French. All right, here we go. Jesse Owens.
100 Meter Ausscheidungsläufe. Amerikas schnellster Läufer, Jesse Owens, ist am Start.
So there's Jesse Owens. Everyone's kind of getting ready.
And this is what, after she made this, she had to actually leave the country.
I can imagine. I mean, her favorite movies were Charlie Chaplin, and so I'm sure that's not very popular in Germany. So here we go. They're getting ready. Let's see if he starts low. Load it high.
That's right. Gotta glide.
Ooh.
He's very focused. And look at this.
There you go.
Only black man in the race.
Get it,
He started way, way back. And now, he literally was like from last to first. So there we go. And look, it's great.
And the crowd was cheering like crazy. It was a huge thing.
You can pause
we don't
there,
know if
Zach.
that's the actual shot.
No, but that's supposedly, according to history, supposedly one thing that they did get right is that the audience really did love Jesse Owens. Like, they were really cheering for him. And then there's also a point where they display Hitler leaves, like kind of storms out. That it might be a blend of history and fiction. He is said to have like left, but not necessarily stormed out.
Not necessarily right after.
Let me ask this. I do want to know, in terms of, because I think this does get, I didn't do as much of the research on the history side of it, but, the Olympics, any kind of sporting event, now people fly in from all over the world to see.
Yeah.
What was the ratio? Like, was it primarily just, Germans at this stadium?
I don't know. I really don't. That's a great question. I would imagine it was primarily that because
I would definitely imagine.
Yeah, I don't think that it's not back then. It's not what it is now. It's not like you get everybody from around the world flying in to see that.
And even back then, it wasn't just America wasn't the only country that was having issues with the Olympics with Germany. It's like other countries were also backing out too. So probably for that.
I'm sure Poland wasn't thrilled.
Yeah, that it was probably mostly consisted of Germany. And Germans.
Very good.
Another note on Lenny just before we move on is there was a point in time where they actually made her cut out all of Jesse Owens from the film. And then they looked at it and realized it was foolish, and they put it all back in.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's great.
And so, by the
Kept
way,
the director's cut.
the entire rundown of all of this you can download if you click the link in our description. So there's fun little tidbits about all the other actors. But let's move on to other fascinating things. Not that these guys aren't fascinating in them of themselves, but one of the Easter eggs of all this was that this celebrates the 80th anniversary of the 36 Olympics, which I found fascinating. I'm surprised they didn't use that more as a marketing tool.
Yeah, I didn't see that at all.
So.
I mean, it's nice that it just coincides with the same year as another Summer Olympics. But it's just the timing of the release too. It's February, which is Black History Month, so I think
They
that
moved
also
it up specifically because it was originally supposed to be April.
So I think that coincides with just the message of the movie and the story that it's not just because of the Olympics, because there's racism involved as well. Which I don't think it takes it away from anything either. I think that actually enhances the film.
Now, one of the things we were talking about earlier that I did kind of find interesting, you guys were saying that there weren't enough close-ups and things like that. In terms of the cinematography of it all, it made me think, because when John, and Sarah, and you as well, Marisa, to get coverage, that's time consuming.
Yeah.
Time then equals money.
Right.
And especially for the Olympic stuff, especially I can imagine that must have been their hardest days. And even though, I mean, it does take a large portion of the movie to shoot there. And so it couldn't have been easy. So I found it interesting. Peter Levy is the cinematographer, by the way. He's worked on Predator 2, Lost in Space, House of Lies, and in fact worked a lot with Stephen Hopkins, particularly. So they seem to have a good rapport going.
Well, some of the difficulties with shooting this, speaking of scenes, a shot where Jesse Owens enters the arena. There was 200 extras enlisted to play the 200,000 Germans.
They multiplied them a
The
few.
trickiest shoot was supposedly where Hitler enters the viewing box, because you're not allowed to do the Hitler salute in Germany. It's against the law.
Right.
So
That's a good
shooting
law.
that and covering the swastikas in between takes, all of that provided some difficulty as well in shooting, despite money and keeping things moving quickly and getting all your shots.
Well, yeah, because you have to unnecessarily CGI in these things. It's like, okay, well, we could literally just take some time and put swastikas all over this in terms of production design, but now, no, instead we have to go back in and put them in post.
Yeah.
So interesting. I found that interesting too.
I thought it was difficult. And for me, I don't know if any shots stuck out to you guys, but I thought the most memorable shot was the spinning one.
Yes,
When he's
I was
coming
just
into
gonna
the-
when Jesse actually walks into the arena, it tracks him for the longest time. There was I don't know how
All the way
long
to
exactly
to the line and
right, and there was right after the whole conversation about the shoes, and you kind of see him take those out. I thought it was great to tracking him and just his reaction to everyone around him. But really, and then it goes with the audio, because the audio it slowly fades out, and it's really just him at the line. I thought for storytelling that was pretty cool, because for the audience, we felt we were at the line with him. I thought that was just visually, it was intriguing to watch. But overall, it didn't really bring the tension. It just made us feel like we were also part of the race.
I have to say, it was interesting for me to watch that, because as it's happening, I'm going, why are we making such a big deal out of this heat? Because I'm thinking Olympics, and I'm going, and I didn't realize it was the final heat, because I was thinking, why are we making a big deal out of a preliminary heat? Because in the Olympics you have heats
That's
before you get to
exactly
the finals, and
my
I'm
problem.
going, we're making a big deal about this. Is this the final heat? Why are they showing it? So it didn't work on me, only because I had too much awareness of how they run the Olympics.
For me, it made me dizzy, and I was like, oh, it's him being dizzy. I feel the pressure, because now I'm visually dizzy.
I didn't get the sense that we're going into the final heat of it,
the final.
that this is for the medals, and I went, and since that was lost on me, I wasn't set up the way you would want your audience to be set up.
I agree with you, John, there too, because I love the Olympics and I watch it religiously when it comes on, because I thought, and this was the first biggest race of his, that okay, it was really cool to watch.
Yeah.
But I was expecting this was the semi round,
Exactly.
and then you go to
Yeah.
the finals, and I was like,
And
it's
there was
over.
no talk
He
of
won.
any of those. I
You
was
guys,
like,
stop being so
It's over, he
educated.
won.
it's true. It's
But
unfortunate.
I completely agree with you,
But
John,
that's-
because
yeah.
there are more races before the big build-up
Yeah.
race that was it. The audience was just transported to the last.
And I'm sure
one.
they didn't have the time, and if just for the people like me or like Marisa who know about
We
the
who know
it
how
would have been
Olympics
nice
run.
to know ahead of time that this was for the medals, because they didn't say that. They didn't set that context at all. So.
Yeah.
I mean, because we play out all the races just in real time.
Yeah.
Did you think that worked? Like, because you could see the other choice would have been, okay, make it just in slow mo and,
Yeah.
and kind of pretend to get inside of his head and see what's going on. And
Chariots of Fire. Or
I'm
something.
glad that they showed it in real time, because that was the whole message they were trying to get across. He's
10
the
seconds.
fastest sprinter. He does it in 10 seconds.
They
10
hit
seconds
that-
on film for
They rang
that.
that bell a couple of times. 10 seconds. 10
Yeah.
seconds, 10 seconds.
And so the fact that they showed it as it was and made it in real time, it made it more authentic just watching the performance rather than over dramatic.
did anyone actually clock it?
No.
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 Well, it should be like 6 seconds.
In the theater. No.
9.4. No, it's 9.3.
Because I only bring that up
7.3.
because it is a funny, like, in a movie, that is a
Yeah.
funny technique of, like, in order to show 10 seconds, you
have
actually
to
have to
show
edit.
6.
Yeah, to edit it down.
Well, also the clocks that they used back then, that was standard time, and today's Olympics they use laser time, which is actually slower to start than standard time by the hand, which is ironic. But so even the times, the antiquated methods of recording time back then is still pretty fast.
I don't know if it was 10 seconds. It was fine. Whatever it was, it worked.
The amount of running, racing, competing they had in this, I thought was done really well.
Yeah.
I didn't really want, it wasn't overdone. I didn't want more. I didn't want less. I thought the amount of time we spent on the track or as he trained in the street was all handled very, very well.
Yeah, and I like the long jump too, for the simple fact of the faults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I would have liked to have a little bit more, because he's doing the initial. He takes his whole run up, and that's what he does, and he gets the fault that way, and it didn't have the weight because he just talked about with Coach of, hey, the rules are different.
Yeah, and they didn't. Yeah, they kind of set it up, but they didn't really mind that for the way you needed to.
And also, I think it was just the way, because during his whole running practices and rehearsals and stuff, it was really just the running that was focused on. The audience never really saw, this is how you do the long jump. We didn't see the rules laid down.
No rules mentioned.
Yeah, so for Jesse to learn those rules at the time the audience was learning it, I like that.
One of the things I forgot. What did you guys think of Peacock? I really like Peacock as well, because I think it was a good counterpart to him, especially in the United States.
Yeah. I like the character, and I like the last scene they had together. That's what we were talking about, right? On the
shove it
on
up
the
Hitler's
bridge.
ass.
bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But even in that one, I was like, I wanted, I don't know why I'm talking about what I wanted instead of what was, but that argument that he made wasn't a very compelling argument to me for the main character to hear.
It was just more noise, though. I think once you succumb to the idea that no matter how much anyone tries to identify and give him good advice,
Right.
And
It's just more noise.
It's just more noise, and
Right.
ultimately it has to him just run.
I agree with that, except for here's the thing. The thing that was missing for me in the depth, all that stuff I was talking about is, I get that, and I like the analogy. It's all just, if you're an athlete, you just have to put it all behind you, get it out. Don't think about it. It's all just noise. I understand that part of it, but there, for a deeper sense, for instance, I just mentioned Chariots of Fire. You knew why they were running. And I don't really get a good, strong sense about why he was running, why it was so important to him. And I know he makes the argument, it's the only time I'm free. It's not black or white, it's fast or slow. And that was a great scene. But in that moment, I don't think they connected those two things for me. I know it's there. I just I don't think it connected when in that moment, this is the only time I'm free. That's for me. But maybe it did for other people.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's so many things to latch onto that the I don't know what you call it. The sum is greater, better, lesser than the whole. I don't know. Music. Music. So Rachel Portman did the music. She's done Dolphin Tale 2, The Right Kind of Wrong, which Maria was in. Yeah, at our old studio. They shot a couple of scenes there. The Duchess and Mona Lisa Smile. I mean, I thought
She also did Never Let Me Go, one of my favorite films. Great film.
There you go. I left that off the list. Glad
Can't
you had
forget
it.
that one.
I don't know. Music-wise, I thought, when they were hitting strong, as Marisa mentioned, in that scene when everything goes quiet, I thought the sound technique and the music and everything was hitting on all cylinders. But apart from that, I didn't think it was bad, but it just didn't necessarily stand out to me.
They enter in with like a really dynamic piece of music. The movie starts with a really dynamic piece of music. Also, the scene is, I believe, like really blue.
Because he's running, right?
Yeah.
It's the morning.
It's the morning, but it's also like, I'm pretty sure it's really blue, and he like also goes inside. And I was like, oh wow, this movie's gonna be a lot more stylized than I thought. And then it kind of changed, and I very distinctly remember like the look, the lighting, the tone that first kind of opening couple of minutes had, and then I don't remember music for the rest of the film. It just kind of shifted for me. I don't know if in a good way or bad way, because it caught my attention, and then I didn't miss it though in the end.
Not to be funny, but it didn't have as much German music as after a certain point I thought it would have. You know, because
sure.
The Nazi patriotism. You know, you thought perhaps that would be playing throughout.
Yeah.
But I guess not.
Yeah, I noticed the sound design more so than the actual complimentary score.
Indeed. And I mentioned this a bit earlier, and I want to get your guys' take only because I think Hail Caesar suffered from this. And I don't know if this movie, that one had like articles upon articles about this. This one, not necessarily much, but where the marketing so heavily focused on him, as I thought it should have. But as we mentioned, it didn't highlight the 80th anniversary, which I think it could have.
Yeah.
And it certainly didn't prepare any of us that there would be these huge chunks of subplot. And it's one thing to have subplots, but again, there were whole chunks where we left his story.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, had we known that was a little bit going into it, it would have been better braced, perhaps?
I had to search for marketing on this. So that's something that I can't really comment on, because I knew about this movie because I looked at like what's coming in theaters on movie ticket websites versus it being anywhere near like my routine, and I didn't see it on TV. I didn't see it really in theaters in the previews.
Well, John, you're a history buff. I mean, you were really excited for this movie.
I was, and I think it was a mistake not to tie it to the 80-year thing. I think, or even to tie it to how relevant it is today.
Yeah.
I mean,
they specifically chose to release on Black History Month. Like it was, as I mentioned, it was supposed to be April. They moved it up, and they made no mention of that.
Yeah, exactly. That, I mean, maybe they thought, well, we're in Black History Month. Why do we have to speak to it? But I just think those things I would have done that. I think it would have been more successful if they had done that, because I just do. How can you not? But they chose not to for whatever reason. Now, as to the part about whether or not they should have included the other storylines, I don't know if that would have helped in the marketing, only because I don't know that people would have cared about that part of it. But it certainly would have been better for an audience knowing that was going to be, because I think it's a huge divergence. You're thinking to go on this one guy's journey, and for a large part, you don't. You're in you're in the back room of Germany, and why they're doing it, and Leni Riefenstahl. And it's like, what has this got to do with this one man's journey? Now, granted, that it's the backstory, and not the backstory. Excuse me, it's the backdrop of where we are. But I just thought they took way too much time on it.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, and especially for a trailer, you have to be so simplistic in your message.
Yeah. Trailers are one of the hardest things to cut.
Yeah, I mean, but again, as a trailer, I thought the trailer did what it. I thought it was a fantastic trailer. I just think again and I don't think it was misleading of the movie that you got, but it didn't tell you everything that you were going into fully, which was the backstory of that. But all in all, I mean, they hit their numbers in terms of...
Yeah, they certainly did.
In terms of what they were projected, it was between 4 to 7 million. And they ultimately made up where the
7.4.
7.4. So they
On budget of 5,
Yeah.
and it does have fairly decent reviews. So we'll see how word of mouth does for this.
So, but let's talk about this. So, Rotten Tomatoes giving it a 6. It's a 60%
59.
fresh.
59.
Beg your
So
pardon,
it's,
59.
that's just 1% in the Rotten.
In Rotten, okay. But the reviews by audience members are giving it a 4 out of 5.
Yeah. I mean, it's got A on Cinema Score.
Yeah,
That's huge.
So, yeah, it's getting really. The audience is really liking
Is
it.
the Rotten Tomatoes score the critic or the audience?
Is what?
Well, there's both. There's a critic. The
Critic.
59% is critics, not fresh. The 4.5, 4 out of 5 is the audience score.
Well,
So there's 2 scores: the critics and the audience.
I mean, I think that, critics go for typically structure, connect the dots, make sure that everything
Yeah,
is
but it's
there.
definitely a feel-good
Audience
movie.
goes for the feeling, and I think
It's a
you come
feel-good
out of
movie.
this with a good feeling.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know, but would you give it a 4 out of 5? Because I don't. I wouldn't. I would give it
No.
a 3.
Again, I mean, I think it goes to
I'd
Sarah's
give it a
initial.
3.
I think it goes to Sarah's initial point. If I'm looking at it as a movie, I'd probably give it a lesser score. If I'm looking at it as an interest piece because I like this person's story as a human being, then I give it a little bit more because I was interested.
Yeah.
So
I think
Exactly.
I'm. It's one of those things where because I like history so much, I'm so glad they made it. I'm really glad they did. As a standalone, just as a movie, it was like it was okay. But because I'm so glad that they make these kinds of movies. I think people should watch it because it's a fascinating
It's
story.
like, go watch something, learn.
Yes, exactly.
But it's not like, go
But
watch
you're not,
something.
it's not like you're being
film.
fed your medicine. Here, you need to go learn. I mean, it's at least intriguing and entertaining enough that you're going
Yeah.
to enjoy it yourself while you happen to be learning about a great moment of history.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What I liked is that it spans over a lot of generations, a lot of demographics too, and it's not just or what age you are and what race you are. It's still relevant to today's society as well, because the Olympics are a recurring thing. Racism and prejudice is still a thing that's prevalent, and I think it's just a story that happened back in that time. It was still important to today, that people need to know about the story to just deal with the things that we're dealing with now. People need to know it.
I agree, and especially I mean, there's so many stories that just come out about racism every day. Facebook just had one where Mark Zuckerberg emailed his entire staff and he said, "Listen, stop crossing out the Black Lives Matter and writing All Lives Matter. It's a form of censorship." Like, there's so much. So I'm not going to go into that. But any other sort of final thoughts on this movie? Anything that particularly that you guys wanted to discuss that we didn't touch upon yet?
I did have a question. Well, now one just popped in my head as we were talking about this, and I was like, well, who would I recommend this for? Could you guys see this movie being played in, like, schools?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course,
like,
because
yeah.
hopefully it would create discussion about that era and what happened and how America was at the time and what we expected of how we expected other countries to behave when we weren't even doing anything of our own. I think that's amazing. Horribly hypocritical, but it's amazing in the sense it's unfathomable. And I think it's a great point of discussion.
And especially because it has those elements of context, I think it lends itself a little bit better to certainly a school atmosphere.
I agree.
And even this discussion, I think, is great. The Olympics are supposed to be not about politics. So, do you go to another country and allow the athletes to compete, even though you don't like that other country or what they stand for or what the ideologies they export? Because as soon as you say no, then it becomes political, and it's supposed to be free of politics. Even that's a worthy discussion.
Yeah.
What's better, to have the world come together in sport? Because whatever the Olympic creed is, I can't remember what it is, to come together to strive, all that is an incredibly lofty goal. And isn't that a good thing for people to hear and to witness and experience? And if we only do it in countries that we like, are we denigrating that thought, that idea? I mean, I think that's a worthy discussion to have in schools.
I agree.
Well, especially, I mean, it's still alive today. I mean,
We might have found this movie's good spot.
well, the next World Cup is going to be in Russia, and then the
Right.
one after that, I believe it's fully confirmed.
Qatar.
Yeah. And people are not happy about
No.
either decision, but it's
No.
like, okay, well, that's the
Okay.
World Cup. That's
Yeah.
different,
125 degrees.
Well, that's a whole separate discussion.
Yeah.
Well, we had the
exactly.
Summer Olympics coming up this year
Yeah.
in Rio, so that'll be fun for the world to come back together again.
But I think it's a great movie to show in schools. I mean, maybe that's why they made it. Because I can't see. Is there any reason why you couldn't show it in school?
It's
I don't know-
PG-13,
I don't know
so
if you-
it's easy.
Because I don't think they've. I think it's pretty safe in schools.
Except for the
I
drinking.
can't remember anything that was.
I'm sure the
the
teacher would be
drinking.
like, don't, you shouldn't be drinking.
yeah.
See, that's what it leads to,
Right.
depression.
But
Other than
because there's so many things you can't say. There's the Depression, there's the World War II, there's the racism, there's all kinds of things that you can, in a historical context, that you can bring to class.
Absolutely. So, any other last thoughts after our? No. All right. Well, in that case, it's time to wrap this up. First and foremost, thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys tune in regularly, thank you. If you're just tuning in for the very first time or sporadic kind of viewer, that's okay too. Thank you for joining us. Please do leave your comments below. There's so much stuff to discuss, and we want to know your thoughts. Again, whatever of interest for you, just write it in there, and we'll be happy to kind of comment along with you guys when we can. In the meantime, John can be found here doing
Right
other
here.
Anatomy of Movies.
That's right.
Sarah.
I can be found at Sara_Stretton. Here on Anatomy of a Movie, on Box Office Breakdown. Game of Thrones comes back soon. I'll be there, and sometimes I join Covino and Rich on Thursdays.
There you go.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV.
And follow us here at The Popcorn Talk, and of course, Movie Anatomy. Specifically, we've got Risen coming up next week. We've got Eddie the Eagle, another
Eddie
feel
the
good.
Eagle.
Another Olympics.
I think
Historical
we're on
context.
a roll.
I'm excited.
That's right.
And
go
all the
see
racism that he
999.
undergoes being the ski jumper. The British ski jumper.
And hey, if that's not your cup of tea, we've got Batman v Superman coming up as soon as
999 will also be coming up. That's another one.
Civil War,
Now you're shooting.
X-Men.
You're going further and further.
Godzilla 2, Star
Wolverine
Wars.
3,
Godzilla too.
Rogue One.
When it comes out.
All right.
All right, thank you guys. We love you. See you next time.
It's Godzilla too.
An eye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.